Everybody seated. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Hope you had a good day. And this is the most important session today because we'll be talking energy security, which underpins national security, as we know. So I would like to first welcome my speakers. Clément Beaune, High Commissioner of Strategy and Planning, Government of France.
Good afternoon.
Welcome. Leila Benali, Minister of Energy Transition and Sustainable Development of Morocco. Welcome. Michael Goff, Acting Assistant Secretary, Office of Nuclear Energy, Department of Energy, United States. Welcome. Andres Sutt, Minister of Energy and Environment, Estonia. Welcome. And last but not least, Rafael Mariano Grossi, Director General, International Atomic Energy Agency. Welcome. All right, so as we heard, our panel today is about a world on edge and energy transition on track. So the questions will be, are we on edge and are we on track? And my first question I will direct to Mr. Beaune, High Commissioner. So France definitely can be seen as on track because it's actually largely decarbonized, especially in terms of electricity generation. So you're in a very comfortable position as a country, but with that position comes also responsibility. How do you view France's responsibility for international cooperation and driving energy transition around Europe? And how do you see the role of France in spreading sort of the good news and spreading how to achieve the transition and maybe how to help some other countries achieve it quicker?
Thank you very much, and thank you for your invitation on this panel. Very happy to be back in Warsaw and to discuss this important question. I think it's just interesting, and we'll get back to that when we talk about security, now we include energy, certainly. And when we talk about energy, we don't talk only, and I'll revert to that, about green transition, which remains, of course, very necessary. But we also talk about geopolitics. I was discussing with the CEO of the stock exchange in Paris a few days ago, and he said the new name of ESG is not as it used to be environment, social and governance, but energy, security and geopolitics. And I think it's quite true and says a lot. And the French position and responsibility in Europe, as you say, there is a very positive element that we are proud of, which is that our electricity mix is highly decarbonized, 95%, thanks to nuclear energy. I say thanks to because I know it's a debate in the EU, it's a debate sometimes globally, but we are convinced, and we've been convinced over decades, that it is an element of green transition, but of course of sovereignty. But we are aware that in Europe, the starting points are different. The political positions are different of nuclear energy, and we don't ask for a generalized approach or standardized approach to nuclear energy, but we think it should be part of the solutions, and we defend this principle of energy neutrality, as long as it's low carbon and part of the transition in the EU. So this is a positive element, this very high level of decarbonization of our electricity mix. That said, and we should be aware, because I think it says a lot about sovereignty and dependency still, even with such a high level of decarbonization of electricity, we have 60% of our final consumption of energy, which is dependent on fossil fuels. So even though we made a lot over decades in the 60s, mainly to decarbonize through nuclear energy, we are highly dependent still, less than others in the EU, but still on fossil fuels, which means that we should, for both reasons, and we should say both reasons all the time, for green transition objectives, but also for more sovereignty and less dependency, go on with this idea that we should reduce the dependency on fossil fuels, which, of course, in France, as everywhere in the EU, are imported. So that's very important. I think we made some points in this fight in Europe that the climate goal should be common, and the energy goal should be differentiated with different paths, different energy choices, nuclear for us, and we think it's important, as I said. Maybe just a final point, and I will go back to some points, I guess, in the discussion, but I don't want to be too long. There are things that I think we are not doing so well in this Europeanization of the debate a few years ago, we were very reluctant in France about interconnections with our neighbors, Spain mainly, because there was a reluctance that opening the market would be, of course, more competition, not very good for bigger player of energy production in France, electricity production. But President Macron has changed his approach a few years ago. I'm not saying that it's easy. It takes time, also because we have domestic debates about environment, about impact on biodiversity, on landscapes, and so on. We know these debates, but the objective is very clear now that we should, for security reasons, to have energy which is green, stable, and sovereign, develop interconnectors across Europe. There is money from the EU, as there is more now investment from France and a more open approach, and I think it is also part of this EU common approach, which is necessary towards sovereignty on our continent.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, because Ursula von der Leyen actually in her State of the Union mentioned the 8 energy highways around Europe, and one of them would be the interconnector between France and Spain. And as we saw last June, this can be really important for energy security of a country. So it's great to see that France may be finally warming up to the idea after many, many years of deliberation. So fingers crossed for that. Thank you. So I would like to now move to Madam Minister. So Morocco is a country that is still very much based on fossil fuels. If I'm not mistaken, probably 70% of electricity generation is still fossil fuel based, mainly coal. But it has made big progress over the past few years in renewables. And Morocco is really blessed with abundant renewable resources, wind and solar, especially wind. So my question would be, because here on this continent, or in the EU, we generally view energy transition as something, or especially in Poland, as something that has been imposed on us, if you will. Something that is, these are European Union goals, we need to meet them. But Morocco is not a member of EU, yet it's still moving forward with energy transition. So if you could explain to us why and how the energy transition is viewed in the sort of energy strategy of your country, and what are the goals and how do you want to get there with your energy strategy?
Thank you very much. No, I think it's, when I sat down on this panel, I thought, it struck me that I will probably be the only one in this panel with my friend, the minister from Estonia, who will talk about diversification. Because that, for us, is really written in our DNA. And our energy strategy has been stable, the same boring triangle since 2009, thanks to His Majesty. And we have that long-term vision that enables us to not only to sign long-term partnerships, and the partnership that we signed with France in October of last year at the occasion of the visit of President Macron was really important. So I'm very pleased to hear that energy connectivity is back on the agenda, or is making its space in the agenda, because for us it's the third key pillar of our energy strategy, and it's non-negotiable. It's non-negotiable for sustainability reasons. As you rightly pointed out, we really want to expand our renewable fleet. So we have already exceeded our 45% of electricity capacity based on renewable last year. And we are reaching our 2030 target next year, which is 52% of installed capacity based on the renewables. Now you will tell me, having installed capacity is not sufficient, you need those electrons to make it to the grid. Well, yeah, fine, absolutely. The problem that we faced is, like many other countries, and I'm not going to point to any particular country, we have invested a lot in rural electrification, so we have reached 99.8% of electrification of the country, but at the expense of investing in the grids. And today, when our government came into place in 2021, I mean, I had two major energy crises, 4 months before the Russia-Ukraine war started. The first one was Algeria cutting the gas to Spain and Morocco being a transit country. So I had 10% of the installed capacity that was dependent on that gas that we had to work to restart. And I was lucky to have on the other side of the Mediterranean, a very fantastic lady, Teresa Ribera, who was Energy Minister of Spain, and we were able, in a matter of a few weeks, just on a handshake between two ladies, to reverse a transcontinental pipeline and give access to energy security to Morocco. And also, there's another aspect that I want to highlight here. When Spain faced its blackout last June, we were able, because we have invested in connectors between Africa and Europe. Morocco is the only African country today interconnected with Europe, gas-wise, but also electricity-wise and bidirectionally. And we are pushing ahead with like-minded allies and countries to increase that connectivity between the two continents, because for us it's a matter of energy security, and for our friends on the other side of the continent, it's a matter of security and sustainability, so that we can provide to our populations access to stable, secure, but also low-cost and sustainable energy. So it's very important to keep in mind that today in 2025, there is actually no contradiction between security and sustainability. They actually complement each other.
Yes, thank you for that, because exactly that I want to bring this out of this panel, that really energy security, energy transition means energy security and means energy independence and sovereignty. And that's what we are striving for. I want to maybe explore a bit more this interconnectivity issue, because we've also heard for a long time, I've been, as long as I've been in the sector probably, we've been talking about bringing Africa's solar power to Europe. There was this famous Desert Tech project in the 2010s, I believe, that didn't go through now. There was a project between Morocco and UK that was supposed to bring electricity to the UK. It has also been not successful so far. So how do you view that? And maybe whether, you know, coming back to the issue that Morocco still needs also the solar and the wind domestically for your own needs, how do you view that imperative to supply Europe with energy, maybe before you supply your own needs?
I usually tell my partners, colleagues in Europe, in Africa, in the major geopolitical blocs that are investing today in the main clean tech technologies, that it takes two to tango. We cannot build a cable or reverse a pipeline or build hydrogen highways, if we still believe in green hydrogen, if there is no partner on the other side who is willing to have first that long-term vision, but also commit to non-binding offtake contracts. Because at the end of the day, you need to have some confidence on both sides. And it's very important if you have on both sides a conviction that if you build a cable between, let's say, France and Morocco, and I'm not saying that because you're sitting next to me, Clément, Beaune, but because we have been discussing that. And it's very much public knowledge that we have looked into it, and we have looked into the major challenges. And these challenges, as Clément rightly pointed out, are not the technology challenges that you can think of. They are incumbents who would be resisting change. So as long as we don't put in place the governance needed to insulate the decision-making process in the energy sector from that sort of resistance, we will never be able to really increase connectivity between our markets. I mean, the European market has been built on a coalition. At the time it was, right, a coalition of coal and steel. I see that today, if you are really serious about energy security being important on both sides of the Mediterranean, I think it's high time to build a similar coalition, regardless of whether we are members of the EU or not, because the sun doesn't choose where to shine. and the markets do not choose where to develop.
Yes, absolutely. I fully agree. Thank you for that. And let's remember this interconnectivity. We'll come back to that issue later on, but that's probably how Europe can get stronger with interconnectivity with our neighbors. Now, Mr. Goff, Mr. Assistant Secretary, US is a net energy exporter, which is a very comfortable position again to be in. These exports actually are not very huge part of GDP, but geopolitically, strategically, this is very important, obviously, for the US. Now, you have spent your career in the nuclear energy, as I know, and we have recently, well, for many years, we have been told that nuclear renaissance is coming and nuclear renaissance is happening. And now we have another go at this nuclear renaissance. And you will explain to us, hopefully, why this time it will be different and we will get there. There is this, I think, 4 new executive orders signed by President Trump recently, aimed at expanding and promoting nuclear energy in the US as well, not just as exports of technology elsewhere. And so if you could tell us how, US energy strategy views nuclear energy and why is it so important to expand on it in this turbulent world that we live in?
Yeah. You had to bring up the Renaissance one. We're living down that last Renaissance. But this time, I really do think we are about to hit that Renaissance. We are, and it's for the reasons that we've discussed here. I mean, we're looking to have affordable, reliable, secure, safe energy to meet, provide our energy security needs. And we've all recognized, I think, over the last 3 years, especially, energy security as national security. So this is a matter we've got to do this. We can't fail. We've got to make sure that we have secure, reliable energy. For us, in the United States, when we've looked at how we meet these goals, we do think nuclear is critical. We're facing right now growing electricity demands that we haven't seen in my lifetime. The demands driven by advanced manufacturing and AI are just pretty phenomenal. So we've got to be able to meet these with affordable, reliable electricity. And again, nuclear is what we really think is really required. You've really got to have that resilient, reliable electricity to provide power for these data centers. And I want to stress, it's not just data centers for the heck of data centers. We think we've got to win the battle for AI. With our allies and partners, we've got to do this. For national security reasons, we've got to do this. So we've got to make sure that we can provide that power so the data centers can move forward, so our manufacturing can move forward. So for those critical reasons, we've got to do this. So yeah, I think we have really set ourselves up well now to be successful. We have great technologies that have been developed that are ready to deploy. We have technologies that have various stages of licensing, but are really close, that should be deployed this decade. One of the key things we've battled through the years about is regulatory certainty. Part of the executive orders really wanted to sit and formalize. We're going to have a set time frame for when reactor developers can get, within 18 months, they know they're going to get a construction permit or not. So we're setting up to have regulatory certainty. We have new systems set up within the country to be able to how we're driving toward deployment. It's not just utilities, but right now we're having these data centers and developers investing significant amount of money to make sure that we can move forward on these technologies and deploy them. So now it's a completely different setup now. We really have the technologies ready to move forward so we can deploy them domestically. But in doing that also, we want to make sure that we can export the technologies as well. So we want to work together with both domestic deployment and international deployment to quickly get to where we're de-risking these plants. We can't be continually building first of a kind and then wait and then build next first of kind. We've got to get to nth of a kind plants, so we're really doing this in an affordable manner. So that's why you're developing an order book for these technologies, and a number of these companies are developing pretty significant order books now, and they're both domestic and international order books, because when we build them, it's, we're trying to develop the supply chain internationally. So I think, we do recognize so much the importance of that. We're recognizing, again, the geopolitical importance. We've got to really make sure that when we do deploy them now, we're deploying them in a manner that we have, security of fuel supply in the future. That's why we've been working with a number of our partners, especially through this group that we call the WSF2025. It's France, the United Kingdom, and Canada and Japan, working to make sure that we have a reliable fuel source that's free from Russian influence. So again, we really can have that fuel security going forward to deploy this technology internationally and meet all of our various energy security goals.
Yeah, thank you upon touching upon that, because I wanted to ask you exactly on this one, on supply chain, because still Russian fuel is still used all around the world, also in the US, for nuclear energy. So how do we, how do we get rid of this influence? Because it's a worrying one.
It is very much. When Russia invaded Ukraine, we were importing about 20% of our enriched uranium product came from Russia. That quickly made us realize that's not a reliable fuel source. We can't rely on that. So we have put a ban in place that becomes in effect the end of 2027. No more Russian material can come in. Right now it can only come in with waivers. But in doing that, we also are investing significantly to make sure that we can deploy new enrichment capacity. So we have been funded on the order of $3.4 billion to move forward and establish new enrichment capacity to replace what we were importing, but also to help shore up what our allies have been importing from Russia as well to replace that. That's why we did also work with our partners on the WSF2025 to work together and all come together and see how can we collaborate internationally to make sure that we can set up that fuel supply. So our colleagues from France made significant investments in building out their uranium enrichment. Our colleagues in the UK have also made significant investments in both enrichment and conversion. So we're really now working together in a very collaborative manner to make sure that we can replace that fuel supply, because we have to be able to do that here.
One more follow-up question. What would you say to the critics of nuclear technology that will tell you that it will all be too little too late? Because nuclear energy is probably one of the greatest achievements that humanity has made. But one thing it is not, is it's not quick in deployment. So how do we, it will just be too late for our needs now.
And that's why we've got to deploy it this decade. We can't, we've got to move forward in this. That's why one of the executive orders gave my office the task. We have to demonstrate at least 3 reactors, have them critical by next July, which that's a very aggressive schedule, but I think we will actually do that. These will be more microreactor type technologies. They'll actually be generation 4 type technologies, but we're really focusing all of our resources to actually do this, to really start producing electrons from this. So it's a different focus now. That I think we really will deploy these technologies this decade. And I should know that that'll be large plants, generation 4 plants, small modular reactors. I think we'll be able to deploy some of all of those this decade.
The clock is ticking.
It is. I count those days down.
Let's stay with nuclear maybe a bit. So, Mr. Grossi, you're at the forefront of making sure that nuclear technology is used around the world in a safe manner. You've been exemplary. Your engagement in Ukraine has been exemplary. We've been all looking and in wonder and awe at your activities there. But I have a difficult question for you. Would you say civil nuclear energy increases or decreases energy security in a given country, given your experiences with what has been happening recently in the war?
Thank you. Well, definitely hearing what we just heard from the 3 distinguished panelists and what we will hear, because Estonia is moving also in that direction, it is obvious that people see it this way. It's not me advocating or saying this is fantastic and this is the way you should go. The market has moved already in that direction. You know, when we hear this idea of nuclear renaissance, I rather talk about a return to realism, really, because what we see is that in order to get energy security, or I mean, there are different angles for some, in particular in this part of Europe. Energy security and a very specific dimension of security is, you know, a very important matter. In other places, energy security, which may be, for example, the case in the future, I'm sorry, in Morocco, and in other places, might be diversification, might be getting sources of energy that are going to give you a balance in your energy mix, that are going to be giving you sustainability in your energy mix. So this is where nuclear kicks in already now. Already now is doing that. Again, there is a certain, in the description of the debates, a certain idea that nuclear can be this. Let's stop for a minute. 100 nuclear power reactors are operating now, today, in Europe, in 12 of the 27 countries. Nuclear energy today, now, is producing a quarter of the total energy of this continent and a half of the clean nuclear energy, and all of this in a declining cycle. So let alone where France comes with the new EPRs, where the UK comes with Hinkley Point and Sizewell, and with Poland comes with all the plans, where Belgium has reversed the phase out, Switzerland doing the same, Czechia, and all of the other countries. So all of this is happening already. We are moving also in a dimension of getting, as I was using the example of Morocco, but there are many other examples in all of Africa. I can tell you, there is hardly a week passes without me seeing an energy minister of African countries, Latin American countries, even Central American countries that are looking at the new possibilities that are being opened. And the Assistant Secretary was referring to the microreactors, the SMRs. Of course, all of this needs to be delivered. But I think that we are, you know, around the bend in terms of the discussions. The Commissioner was talking about all these debates. I think, thank God, Europe has stopped fighting against itself on this, and we see them in a more constructive phase, not in Europe, but there were countries suing other countries in the continent. That was a bit dismaying to see, but now, and this is not about an epiphany having arrived on people. It's simply the realization of what are the things that you have in your toolbox to get you there. And it's obvious nuclear is not going to be the dominant, and it's never meant to be. France is an example of that, and they're very successful. China might be in the future. So they are all growing at an exponential rate. What you need to look at to facilitate that, to enable that, and you were asking, is it going to happen, no? In your previous question, nuclear takes a long time, and this and that. And there are a number of unlockers of that situation, which are interesting to be looked at. The finance is one. And I think that something very, very important happened this year when IEA, we signed an agreement with the World Bank that ended a decades-long policy of a ban. Can you imagine? Anything that had the word nuclear was banned, was as a you know, sinful sort of activity that cannot be because of. So that changed, and now we see the African Development Bank, the Islamic Development Bank, the Latin American, the Inter-American, Development Bank, all of them are coming on board, facilitating, unlocking, as I was saying, the possibility of this market growing out of the confirmed users into new territories. Importantly, the issue of delivery, and delivery has, for example, standardization. Very important matter. Harmonization of regulation, and I think in the executive orders you have some of that, but it's a debate that is happening in many other countries, because the nuclear regulation, important as it is, needs also to evolve. with the market. You cannot be licensing after 4 years or 5 years. You have to leverage what others are doing, and you have it with the UK and with Canada, France also moving with like-minded regulators. So what we see is a number of very promising trends and some concrete realizations. And my last reflection, for the first time, what we are seeing is demand-driven nuclear. Demand-driven nuclear. So industries, sectors that are very eloquently and pushing nuclear. AI is obvious, is evident with all the big companies, Microsoft, OpenAI, I mean, you name it, Google, all of them signing very, very ambitious contracts with nuclear vendors, some of them that have never built a nuclear reactor, but they are in the process of licensing them to get what they need. So I think all of these elements are worthy of our following in this kind of debate. And the IAEA has a unique role to play. This must be done safely, securely, in a non-proliferation way, and also opening doors so that all of these things happen in a better, in a more harmonious way.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective. I just want to dwell a bit longer on the security issue,
yes,
particularly because we are at the security conference here, and you will hear people praising renewables, especially for being, distributed, very much harder to target because there are so many, distributed smaller generation units, whereas nuclear is traditionally big, centralized energy source, and as we saw, energy infrastructure tends to be targeted by malicious actors. So how do you view this kind of trade-off between, I would agree with all the advantages of nuclear, but there is this big disadvantage. This is a very easy, well, maybe not very easy, but this is a target.
A target in what sense? A target?
A military one.
Oh yeah, well, nuclear infrastructure is as much a target as military decision makers decided to be. So the problem is the war, not nuclear energy, and we are very busy and very committed to the security of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, for example, where we are deployed there. There was a decision, which is a military decision, but not the fact that because you have a certain technology, this will immediately make it a target. As I was saying, we have 440-something reactors operating in the world for almost 60 years or more without any major problem. So this idea that because Zaporizhzhia happened, then this technology, you better not go into that, sounds a lot like moving the goalposts, trying to find yet another excuse. People say it's too long, or it's too expensive, or is this, or is that. I think maybe I could sum it up by saying that when it comes to energy, ideology is not a good idea. You have to be, or perceptions. You have to see what is good for your concrete situation and go for it. And by the way, we are, we like at the IAEA renewable energy. We don't think it's one or the other. It's a matter of complementarity. We believe that nuclear is baseload, so we are very good with whatever you put on top of us. So, I think, but of course, what happened. One cannot banalize it, but we have institutions that deal with it like we did. We could have, be sitting on the sidelines of the war and say, well, when it ends, we will be there. And I think it was very good to see that the nuclear community at large was supporting very much what we are doing. We're not out of woods, I must say. And these days, I am dealing with the possibility. Well, we have a concrete loss of outside power at the moment, 5 days already. And I was discussing this on Friday with President Putin, and today with Minister Sibia. So we are trying to make sure that we don't have a problem. So problems may exist, but they are not inherently related to nuclear energy. This was a military decision to seize a nuclear power plant, and then we deal with it in the best way we can. This is the way I see it.
Thank you. Mr. Sutt, you come from a region where you're kind of a poster child for all good things that we've been talking about here, which is interconnectivity, energy transition, international cooperation, regional cooperation. How do you explain the road that Estonia has been going on for the past few years in terms of, you had and you still have your domestic resource being the oil shale, which is granted very energy emission intensive, but you've decided to curb that production and expand into renewables in order to increase your security, as I understand, not just to increase your greenness. Could you elaborate on that one?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's sometimes surprising that people forget about the simple fact that wind and solar are also domestic resource. No different what is under your ground. And essentially, I would say it's about the three things. It's about energy security. It's about environment, and that is not less important thing because at the end of the day, we all would like to live in a better world, in a cleaner world, which is with a less negative impact on health and other things. And finally, and we haven't spoken about this here, it's also about the competitiveness. Clean energy is fundamentally the biggest booster of a competitiveness. It comes at a lower financial cost compared to old fossil fuels. I think it's also, where are you making your bet? Are you making your bet on a transition which is irreversible to the cleaner sources of energy, which also includes nuclear? That's why we are also preparing the legislation, the regulator, and all other necessary steps in Estonia to have nuclear energy in our energy portfolio. So from that angle, I think the competitiveness point of view is really, really important. Then on security, you mentioned interconnectors, and as we all know, there has been a number of damages caused. We had an issue with a gas interconnector, with electricity interconnector, and that all puts us to invest much more jointly with allies into protecting all critical infrastructure. It is about the physical threats, but it's equally about the cyber domain, so that we would be ascertained that it is not somebody, third party, who turns on or off your energy grid or power generation. And the debate what you had here just before giving floor to me, I mean, Russia has deliberately damaged the last external power line to a new Zaporizhzhia power plant, which is extremely dangerous and reckless behavior. So on that, I think we should also be mindful that the sooner we progress in replacing our energy to the clean sources, the bigger there will be also impact on Russian revenues, because that is causing the lower demand for fossil fuels and less income to fund the war. So yes, it doesn't happen overnight, but I think strategically it's really important to put the weights right. And we have disconnected our energy grid this February from Russia. So that has been a really good outcome, went very smoothly, a lot of prep work by many counterparties for a number of years. But now we can easily say about energy security that we don't have any loose ends vis-à-vis Russia. And at the end, what we still need is significant investment in domestic power generation. And this is, I think, what most countries need, because the economy is going to be electrified, demand for electricity is growing, and it represents also a major business opportunity for investment into the clean, which in our view also includes nuclear.
Yes, thank you for mentioning electrification, because this is something we have not extensively talked about, but exactly this is, we have these two kind of pillars of energy transition. One is decarbonizing our electricity supply, the other one is electrification via this decarbonized electricity, and this will give us the energy security for the future and independence of fossil fuel imports. So very important point, thank you for that. We have a few minutes now for questions from the audience. I have a microphone there. Over here, the first row, please.
Thank you. Miroslava Petsa, BBC Ukrainian Service. I have a question to Mr. Grossi about the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. You said, and we all know that you met Vladimir Putin just the other day on Friday. You spoke about Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. It's not the only nuclear power plant that Russia attacked during the full-scale invasion. As you may all know, it basically conquered Chernobyl power plant. Then it went to Zaporizhzhia. It tried to attack Pivdенно-Ukrainska, it's southern Ukrainian nuclear power plant. Just 3 days ago, there was a drone shut down only 800 meters away from that station. And there's been instances, the same instances, similar things happening near Khmelnytsky nuclear power plant, and also the only remaining power plant that's not, being attacked, but it's really, really close to the border with Belarus. It's Rivne power plant. So all the nuclear power plants in Ukraine are under threat. And at the same time, at Atomic Energy Agency, International Atomic Agency, the head of nuclear department is Mikhail Chudakov, the very person who's been in charge of nuclear power plant in Russia before, and who worked at Rosenergoatom or Rosatomenergo, whatever it may mean. So, and from Ukraine, in Ukraine, there's been some frustration with regards how your agency is reacting to all those sorts of attacks on nuclear power in Ukraine. How would you describe your conversation with Mr. Putin? Was it fruitful? Have you heard him getting ready to stop the blackout at Zaporizhzhia power plant? And how can you view the work of your very agency? Is it really helping to, for the nuclear energy to remain peaceful?
Yep, let's wrap up the question. Mr. Grossi, please.
Well, how many questions in your question? But let me try to address them one by one and as quickly as I can. The invasion took place in February 2022. In March, I was already in your country. I've been there 13 times. I've crossed the front line 5 times. I was under fire in your country, all right? So, at the request of President Zelensky, our teams are deployed in all of the nuclear power plants that you mentioned, not only in Zaporizhzhia, but also Rivne, Khmelnytsky, South Ukraine, and quite clearly also in Chernobyl. So I believe that what we have been doing there is exactly the example of what an international organization should be in face of trouble, which is getting into it and not talking about it. Not talking about it. There are lots of things we are doing. We have our people living at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. We have a deployment there, also a unique first in history, an international organization in occupied territory leading an independent operation, through which, for example, this issue that we are facing now of the 10th blackout, because it's not the first, it's the 10th blackout, there is something dealing with that. We are not depending on one country giving us a narrative or another country, for example, in this case, where there are two belligerents, okay? So saying the opposite. We have the possibility, the privilege of having independent experts. And on the basis of what my independent experts tell me, I can have an informed conversation with the president of the Russian Federation, with the president of Ukraine, and provide for solutions. My take on this would be that, of course, it's extremely difficult. This is a war, this is a cruel war, but we have stood from day one trying to provide help and assistance to Ukraine. So this is number one. Number two, on the conversation with President Putin and the disposition. I also believe it's very, very important that in cases like this of war, people responsible for international organizations talk to everybody. If I don't talk to Putin, who do I talk to? This is essential. In the beginning of the war, I remember that I took some criticism for doing that. And I was saying, what is the purpose of the IEA if I stay, complaining together with Ukraine and, lamenting the situation and saying, well, this is terrible, and I do not have the opportunity to influence things in the right direction. It's not an easy thing. Obviously, it's not an easy thing. It's a thing that, is a source of frustration many times, and I know there are expectations, very legitimate ones. This is why when I go to your country, I talk to people, whomever comes to me, and also near the border, the front line, not the border, the front line, people come to us, they talk to us. We are trying to do our best, and we are not avoiding any difficult conversation there. You talk about individuals. Please don't forget something. International organizations have international civil servants. We and I don't look at the passport, the original passport. I have people from all over the world working for the agency. I understand the frustration, maybe, of seeing somebody coming from a country. And let me tell you, this happens a lot with other countries having issues with other countries and saying, why do you have somebody from Poland or somebody from Argentina or somebody from... But we have to understand the principle of what international organizations are. Sorry for that, but I think it was
very important.
An important point that the lady was making. I thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to my speakers. Thank you for this very interesting session. Thank you.